Welcome to Fix and Fly, the business podcast, which identifies common business issues for you to watch out for in your day-to-day business life. So tune in every fortnight where we speak to leaders of corporates to SMEs where you can implement their strategies into your business. I'm your host, Larissa Logan from Fixity, where we help turn businesses around. Welcome to the Fix and Fly podcast. Thank you, Vicki, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me here.
So I wanted to do a few episodes on the construction sector to discuss some of the challenges that I'm seeing in the sector. And you obviously operate in construction. Would you mind telling us a little bit about what you do?
I'm a director of Kiwi Cladding. We've had that business for quite a few years now. I actually started in the banking and finance industry many years ago in Auckland, Melbourne and London. Doing equity and margins. And then I went into recruitment, which led me to working in Fonterra for 17 years. And one of my last roles there was business operations manager for global dairy trade. And that sort of led me to buying Kiwi Cladding with my partner. And since then, we've actually turned, it was a relatively small business then, we've actually turned it into a quite profitable business now.
So what are the top 3 tips you have to run a profitable business?
Well, I really think it's to do with, the right staff you have, good communication with your staff, good communication with your clients as well is probably the 3 top key. Not having too many staff as well.
Well, that can be a real challenge, I guess, on cash flow when there's not enough work in the industry, which is what I'm seeing a lot of now with my clients. Do you want to maybe talk about how the sector's performing at the moment?
So the sector, it's a bit tough out there. I'm in the commercial industry and it's very tough. And we're probably quite lucky because we have a small group of permanent employees of, about 8, and then we get in subcontractors in for each project. So when a project starts, we accelerate and get subcontractors in to complete the job. The head contractors too, the way that business is at the moment, it's really, the head contractors have been quite aggressive, contacting all the subcontractors and saying, give me your best price, I can get it cheaper from elsewhere. And so, you're trying to win the job, but you're actually not making any money on the job, you're just getting it to really pay your staff. And sometimes you do have to walk away.
And that's a real challenge I'm seeing often with my clients. There's just no margin in this work. And I think over the last 2 years in New Zealand, just with economic conditions, the work's dried up. And so we're seeing some of the tiers kind of dip down into the next tier.
Yeah, so we usually have probably a year of forward work going on, but at the moment we've only really got like a month or 2 forward work. So it's really tough out there. And with the increased staff costs that keep happening and increase all your costs, really, all your overhead costs are increasing quite significantly. The government are, putting up the minimum wage and now increasing the KiwiSaver contributions as well. So it's really tough for businesses at the moment. So
how are you managing that challenge with tightening conditions, tightening cash flow?
So we are really working to sort of a slim team. We're tightening cash flow. We're going around trying to get good deals on materials. We're not paying for things unnecessarily. We are doing our job well and not having to go back to site and redoing the work. We've got a good group of team around us as well.
Some of the key things I see with businesses that are struggling in the sector is they may not have the right kind of reporting in place. And I'll give you an example, just having specific cash flows for each project to see, is that profitable? What margin should I be making on that? What do you guys do in-house to be able to understand your profitability per project?
So because we're kind of a small to medium-sized business and we use Xero, and we use the reporting through Xero, but usually that's at the end of the project, when it's actually in the past. We don't have at the moment a way to actually look at projections. It's really a hard industry to be able to do that, and if we had a good tool, that would be great if we could do that.
One of the key things of a cash flow, right, is the forward work.
Yeah.
And being able to predict that in advance is really important to be able to sustain a viable business.
Yeah, and at the moment we can't just predict in advance because the industry is just so quiet at the moment, with the election year coming up as well. What tends to happen in an election year is people stop spending money. They stop spending money on their big projects. So we just, at the moment, obviously the war is having a huge effect on that with pricing increase as well. So people are just not going ahead with their big projects, and they're just holding on. Like, we know there's a lot of leaky big commercial buildings out there that really need to be recladded, but the owners are just can't afford really to reclad or do any project work. So everyone's holding on to their purse strings really.
So what do you think is going to be the lever to change the dial?
Especially with subcontractors, the subcontract agreement is not a great subcontract. We need to get that changed to be more beneficial for the subcontractors because it is a subcontract agreement. We also need to look at the contract and make sure it's got the subcontractor dates, not using the head contract dates, and we need to make sure that the retentions are going to be paid out after our works, not actually the practical completion of the whole project. There's little things like that we can do. Be transparent in your contract, have a schedule of rates, be clear about that is probably the most key. So if, some of the things we could change is that I would really like to work with the government on abolishing actually retentions. That would help. Because in so many projects, the head contractor will withhold retentions because they have lost money on the project, so they're pushing their bad management onto the subcontractors, and using us as their bank, if so to speak.
So if we just tap into that retentions that you're talking about, it is one of the key things that I see time and time again where retentions are withheld and it really impacts someone's cash flow, right?
It is, and basically retentions are our margin, our profit at the end of the day.
So what are you seeing with head contractors and how they're operating in the market at the moment?
What I'm seeing with the head contractors at the moment is, they're being pushed by their principal, by their client, on costs and how much the project is costing. So then they push the subcontractors to reduce their pricing, especially in the variation side. They're really strict and really pushed to see whether, those variations are really valid. And most of the time they are really valid and that it needs happening. So the behaviour of the head contracts has changed. Well, I see it's changed in the recent years as, they're getting more pressure from their clients. And so there's a lot of aggressive tactics happening at the moment and pushing for subcontractors to decrease their quote on each project because, there's so many subcontractors out there who are looking for work and they know that they can, push to get the cheapest job, but not necessarily as the cheapest subcontractor is better for the head contractor.
I feel like it's been a race to the bottom for many years for businesses operating in the construction sector. How can we improve this? Because everyone needs to make margin, everyone needs to make money, all the way from the head contractor all the way down to the subcontractor. Do you have any top tips or, what you think we can do to change this?
Yes, definitely. The first key thing is know your contract. Look at the special conditions, any of the amended conditions first. Be really transparent in your contract agreement. Have your schedule of rates right there in the contract so that you can refer to and the head contractor can refer to, and it's an open book. Also, I'm actually have created a focus group with a lot of trades all around the country, and we've come together and we've actually had a couple of sessions with the Minister, Chris Pink, and which have been really insightful, and we've actually got quite a few things that we're focusing on. We're actually going to meet with the Minister and MB in the coming weeks to talk through a whole lot of different things. Like with the retentions, we're trying to work with MB and Minister Chris Pink about either abolishing retentions or making sure that, if a head contractor is not complying with the retention rules, part of the Constructions Act, that the penalties are enforced, make sure that they're actually really enforced. We're working with to actually getting the subcontract agreement changed. There's so many clauses in there that just are not fit for purpose for subcontractors. It's very outdated, and we need to make sure that as a subcontractor that your dates in the contract are referred to your dates, not necessarily the head contractor dates as well. We're also looking at having the head contractor to send the payment schedule 5 days before we actually have to send out our next progress claim. That will help a lot with projections as well.
One of the big issues I see with payment schedules is that invoices aren't raised until the very last date, because there's always going to be changes to them. And so it's very hard to predict your forward work based off that. And at the very last minute, businesses are being told, we're not going to pay.
Yes, yeah, that happens all the time. And we'd get the payment schedule 2 days after we've had to, because by the 25th of the month we have to send out the progress claims to our head contractors. And then they have sent through the payment schedule, and they've deducted a variation or deducted an amount for something that they actually haven't discussed with us. And it's just bad management.
It's a huge impact. On a business's cash flow, and it's systemic throughout the construction sector for subbies. So it's real tough. We've seen a number of large failures recently where retentions are a key concern. What's your view on the way that retentions are being held in the industry?
I don't think the retentions are fit for purpose for what they are. There's millions, like tens of millions of retentions sitting in trust accounts at the moment, or sometimes not even trust accounts. And I don't think for subcontractors and potentially even head contractors, it's not fit. It doesn't work. At the moment, there's so many people or companies that are not abiding by the rules, and they're not sitting in the trust account.
Those funds could be used
elsewhere
for a better purpose, right? To grow the sector, to uplift the whole sector. Yeah. They could be used to fund working capital, training, so many different things.
But that's also our profit, because by the end of the day, we've done the project, we've paid all our guys, we've paid all our materials and everything, and we're sitting there, and that is actually sitting there, and we need to use that, as you say, for either the next project or building on what we've got. Putting in some better infrastructure in our businesses as well, because we've got a factory in Henderson, and we need to keep that going, and we need to build on that. With AI coming into the play, we need to make sure we're up to date with everything that's coming in, all the systems, and we use CAD systems. We've got a big wall saw where it's actually quite technical to use, and you have to have specialist people that use it. So and there's also a lot of repairs on buildings and maintenance and that sort of equipment. So that sort of money is it's needed. It's just people like me and others, business owners. We're just trying to go out there and try and find the work as well. The work's just not out there, and so because we're waiting on the retentions to come through, that puts it's nerve-wracking for people. Is that coming through? We've had instances when we've had to go through adjudication just to get our retentions paid to us, and that costs. Legal fees cost.
So we've spoken about cash flow as a key challenge in the construction sector. Forward works, obviously a key challenge, and with the election year looming, what are you thinking, kind of 6 months of subdued economic conditions around, work coming your way?
I probably think longer than that, because of, obviously the election year, but also the Iran war is actually probably pushing that out a little bit further with the increase in fuel costs, which is increasing costs everywhere.
Are you seeing those costs come through now?
Yes, straight away. We're getting on a daily emails from suppliers that they've got increased transportation costs, so they're putting the costs onto us.
And then so your challenge is, right, either you absorb it or you pass it on to your customers.
Well, we can't actually pass it on to our customers because our contracts are, we've signed them 1 or 2 years prior, and we don't have the ability to increase the cost on our contracts,
Well, that's a real challenge for margins that are already very, very thin. So what do? Do you go back to the head contractor?
You can try to go back to the head contractor, but what it is, in the first place is actually having a really good contract and actually with your have a schedule of rates, but also have the validity period of, those rates, because if a job is pushed out 6 months because of other trades, you shouldn't have to wear the increase in inflation costs that come. And this has happened in the last year or so.
Yeah, that's true. So talk to me around resourcing in the construction sector. You've said you keep a lean team and you bring on other contractors as and when required. Are there good people out there in the market at the moment?
There is, and there's a lot of good people who are from other industries who could actually cross over to the construction industry as well. A role I had to put in Seek recently that I got over 100 applicants for, and we only just need one. It's for one role. But yeah, no, there's a lot of good people out there. There's actually a lot more New Zealanders I see out there actually applying for jobs, whereas a year ago there would have been a lot of Filipino or, though from people from China trying to apply from overseas. They're still applying, but I see a lot more Kiwis trying to apply because they've obviously lost their job, which is sad.
Pretty much all of my jobs that I have undertaken in the last 18 months in liquidations, restructurings, IRD payment plans have all been in the construction sector. So that's no surprise to me that we're seeing so many good people out there, looking for work. I think one of the stats is there's 13,000 in the construction sector that have lost their jobs due to business failure.
Yeah, and I'm getting all sorts of, from an 18-year-old to a 60-year-old looking for jobs, and there is definitely a good group of people out there. So, so we tend to try not to use some of those recruitment companies at the moment. We have done in the past because we are trying to utilise, Kiwis that can come and work, for a specific contract. We'd put them on a, short-term basis contract.
Do you think that there's some more education that we could give to business owners that may not come from a business background to be able to allow them to run these construction businesses more viably? Absolutely,
and I think obviously Rainey Sellers' course, Streetwise Subbies, is a great course, and that helps you understand contracts and the Construction Act, which is great. But I think what I'm trying to do as well with this focus group is probably set up where we can have templates that, business owners can just use, because at the moment there's nothing like that.
Do the membership bodies not provide this? There are so many membership bodies for the construction sector.
There's so many membership bodies, but there's nothing. Like, you follow their websites and you don't actually get anywhere.
So
there's a lot of text, but not a lot of
There's a
helpful
legal aspect, but
yes.
What about the numbers?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, if the numbers don't make sense, right?
And I think people need business mentors. I think actually it would be key to actually find a business owner that you actually respect and they are doing really well, and actually asking them to be your mentor would be ideal. Having something like your tool that you're creating would be great to help business owners, because I think that not only will help them learn along the way, but it'll also probably save time and money in the long run.
Alert's been built out of my experience, particularly in the last 18 months. We've seen the number of construction sector failures.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's my why we've built Alert, is to try to, how do we reduce business failure in New Zealand?
Yeah.
What tools do we need to put into place to give business owners to be able to allow them to see early warning signs of distress ahead of time.
Exactly. There's a lot around health and safety, like Site Safe. That's huge, and that's great, and that provides you with all the tools you need for health and safety. But for businesses, there's just not to the extent of what we need to help these business owners.
So what I'm hearing from you is some of these membership bodies maybe need to implement more business-related support, education, webinars, whatever it is, to help support their members.
Absolutely.
How do you see the next 2 to 3 years playing out in New Zealand in the construction sector?
I think we're still going to see a lot of companies that are not going to be around, unfortunately. But I do see it, there's always a cycle that you see. If you look at the last sort of 14, 20 years, there's always been sort of a 7-year cycle. So I'm hoping that it will increase, the elections will be over. We can then start working on building up businesses, but, looking at forward work as well. So there's not a lot of forward work at the moment. So I think people just need the confidence that our industry and the economy are going to be okay, and then that's when projects will come. And obviously letting in international buyers will probably help as well. Help with, they're wanting to enhance their businesses, so they will spend more as well. Just at the moment, just with New Zealand businesses, it's not attractive at the moment to actually own a business in New Zealand, where it used to be a few years ago. So it's really hard at the moment.
What is the one thing you would like changed to uplift the construction sector?
The one thing that I would get change is retentions, and either abolish them or work with MB to try and make sure that if a company doesn't pay out the retentions, that there is a penalty enforced.
So why are retentions so bad?
Because quite honestly, most of the just about every project that we've worked on, and many of our fellow subcontractors, at the end of the project, the head contractor will put in a claim for either liquidated damages or a contra charge to not pay out those retentions. So, and they are, I want to say fictitious, but it's probably not the right word, but they're trying to save some money somewhere, and they're always doing this at the last payment schedule.
So this is common across the sector?
This is common, very common across the sector.
And really ties up cash flow for the subbies.
Yeah.
So last question, what is the best piece of business advice you have ever been given?
In this sector, it's been, you're not just building, you're actually managing risk every day, and to always look at your cash flow and look at your risk.
Oh, I love that. Definitely look at your cash flow. Thank you so much for joining me on the Fix and Fly podcast. I really appreciate the insights you've shared today around the challenges in the construction sector, and wish you all the best in the future, and look forward to where Kiwi Cladding goes.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you so much for watching this episode. If you enjoy the Fix and Fly podcast, make sure you like, comment and subscribe, and share with anyone you think will find this useful. We look forward to seeing you next time.